All right, Jimmy put out another video, so let's watch it.
I've been on this spree of trying basically every major MMO recently, and it got me thinking, and I might be the first one to ever have this thought, but I don't think we're getting another good MMO for a while.
I completely agree. I don't know if we'll ever get another good MMO. Like, I think that like MMOs are a game format that has like long since gone. And by the way, I play like every single MMO that exists, and I enjoy all of them. But I think that like a lot of the joy that we had when we were children playing them, that we chase all the time, can't exist in a game anymore.
Other games that come out, they follow a very similar life cycle. A big mountain slope. You start out at the top, everyone's talking about the game, and it kind of just slopes down and loses its player base over time. I mean, it's a typical life cycle for a game, very natural. MMO.
Sometimes the games don't even have that, man. Sometimes it's like a straight down, you know? You guys see Diablo 4's numbers? That was brutal.
RPGs, on the other hand, follow a very different looking life cycle. They come in all shapes and sizes. They might start out with a bang, they might start out at the bottom and work their way up. But basically the way you know if...
Am I the only one who doesn't like Final Fantasy 14? Like, I still get like pulls at me to play it, and like I get pulls at me to play every single MMO. I think about downloading MapleStory like a lot right now. But like Final Fantasy 14 just didn't do it for me. I know that it's like a story game, but I just don't care. I don't think it's I know that like story in games can be good, but like most of the time it's not, and I think it's mostly just for people who like want to live in an anime, and it like kind of does that for them, you know? Like it's just I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think it's
if an MMO is good,
like it's good. It's a good MMO. Don't get me wrong, but like, man, it's like hundreds of hours standing between you and endgame, and like the game actually starts. No, it doesn't. It doesn't start then. Everyone's past you. Everyone's moved on. Like it's a long trek.
Had any sort of success long term over the span of many years,
RubeusCubeus, baby. That's
kind of looks
one.
like a real fucked up EKG, like it's the game's pulse or something. Never healthy or stable, but it's there, which is what counts. It's been quite a while since we've seen a real banger of an MMO. It kind of feels like the MMO industry has always just been this game of king of the hill, and the ones at the top have ascended so high that there's really no catching up to them. It's really hard to imagine that.
I think you could make a good MMO. I think that like you would have to control a lot of factors, and you would have to sort of like have a vision for it. I think that the aesthetics could drive a really good MMO, but like there hasn't been a creatively good MMO in forever, and I don't know if there ever will be. Like people are getting so boring with what they like, dude. Like it is insane. Like there's just not that much creativity going on in America right now and in the world, and I don't think that like RuneScape was a game that was created out of just like one guy who just had all these ideas about how a game could work and how a world could breathe. And there's a reason that that game's still around. It's not just because it came out a long time ago and it's climbed up and climbed up and climbed up. Like that game is really good. It is big enough that you feel like there's always some kind of mystery around the next corner, and it's small enough that you can hold the whole thing inside of your brain, unlike World of Warcraft, which is, you know, I mean, you can. There's people like Asmon out there who hold the whole thing inside of their brain, but like
them being dethroned, and there's not going to be many that try.
Different kind of the autism, you know?
Not only is developing a massive multiplayer online role-playing game one of the hardest things you can do as a video game developer, but it's also probably the dumbest thing you can do.
Yeah, it doesn't make you any money unless you're going to make it a microtransaction hell, which is going to kill off your player base. But those turn profits still, whales are big for driving profit. But like, yeah, man, I mean, it's so expensive to develop an MMO, and then like the server costs alone to run an MMO, and then like the logistics of having all these players active in the same place. If you guys haven't seen all the New World stuff that happened and like how bad the game designers at Amazon pulled that, like just absolutely threw it in the gutter. Everyone was stoked about that game, and it just didn't work. Like the way that people could do like SQL injection and stuff in that game, like and like overflowing and like just like finding ways to break the code of that game, really simple stuff that you learn like your first couple years of doing a software engineering degree is astounding. Like there was so much tech debt involved in that.
Go into something like that until I tell you about something that someone's going to pay me to tell you about.
Oh, we got an ad.
So 2023 was full of health issues for me, which led to
I don't like it. I don't like the greens.
Involuntary weight
Listen, man,
loss.
I don't like them. I don't think.
This year I've made it a priority.
You ever look at the
to
nutrition
make sure that
facts
I'm
on the
getting
back of
everything
those
I need
things?
for
You ever look
both
at
mental
the
and physical
how
health,
much
and
like actually you're
AG1 is
getting?
helping me do just that.
You ever look at how much you're actually getting from that, man? It's not that much.
It's got 75 different vitamins and minerals
75?
that supports body, brain, and gut health. Very important
I wonder how much a standard multivitamin has in it.
things to keep healthy. And one thing I love about it, it combats visible signs of aging, which is incredibly important for me as Jagex continues to release
FDA? FDA approved?
quest
To
after
combat
quest.
aging? Tested? Double blind? Case studies?
Making it impossible to end my series. AG1 can also help boost focus and mental clarity, and I've always struggled with sustaining energy throughout the day.
I could use that. Focus and mental clarity. My brain don't work.
And after a while of taking AG1, I noticed that I was not clawing and scratching for caffeine throughout the day. I just put water into the little bottle here. I do 8 ounces of water because it actually tastes good. I don't need to water it down at all. I shake it up a bunch, like get my card.
Most greens powders taste really bad, so if it tastes good, that's cool.
In for the day, and I drink it. It's a very easy process. As someone who's trying to be super mindful of nutrition and recovery, I highly recommend giving AG1 a try.
It's really, really hard. The nutrition and recovery thing is so difficult, man. Like, totally. And getting greens in, getting your vegetables in, like, it's so easy to eat protein, it's so easy to eat carbs, it's so hard to eat vegetables. That's the thing that, like, so many of us
try it for yourself by clicking the link in the description, and you can get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 AG1 travel
Vitamin D, that's the good stuff, man. I'm deficient in vitamin D. Get your blood checked.
packs with your first purchase. Big thank you to AG1 for sponsoring today's video.
I don't know what K2 is. K2, back in high school, K2 was a legal marijuana substitute that you could smoke and it put holes in your brain. I have a lot of friends who I think, lives are ruined by K2.
The thing that got me thinking about this the most came from a situation that's been kind of brewing up over the last 3 years. In June 2021, Riot Games put a post up on their website calling for any game developers that are wanting to enter the world of MMORPG.
Man, I would love to see a Riot MMO too. I love Riot's characters and I love their worlds, and I think that they make pretty solid games. I would love to see this MMO actually come through. Hope it does before, I'm 40 years old.
With them. And this was amazing news because it's pretty common knowledge at this point that Riot Games tends to not miss. The things they've been making, pretty good. Well, the MMO community was welcoming them with
League. The card game that I can't remember the name of because I've never played it.
Open arms. If you've kept up with the MMO world in the last 3-4 years, you know that the community is kind of still waiting for that game to come along that's just going to change everything. There was no real official news released for the next 2 years.
Every MMO player, I feel like, you either play one game that you've played ever since you were a child, and that's the only game that you play, period. Like, not even just MMOs, that's the only one you play, or you're a person who has played like every single MMO and you jump around and you take breaks and you play World of Warcraft for a while until you get done with that season, and then you jump over to Guild Wars, and then you jump over to RuneScape, and then you jump over to Final Fantasy, and then you go down to Black Desert and you spend a little while in that hell, and like you move around and around and around. That's like the only two options. And it's just because like there's not a world that you want to live in anymore. Like every game has sacrificed the feeling of a world that you actually can exist in for more content, a smaller learning curve, maybe not smaller learning, but like less overhead of like things you need to do to get competitive, and then like getting to end game as quickly as possible. And because of that, there's no reason to do most stuff in MMOs. Like the only thing you need to do to keep progressing in an MMO is continue to do quests until you're max level, and then start gearing up and go into like the in-game content. You can get gold, you can buy gold if you want to, you can, there's so many ways to like not have to play an MMO and do all the stuff that's in it, and they get rid of their own content. Like they make it all obsolete and they make it all a waste of your time unless you're just some crazed completionist.
The set in stone thing we got was that Greg Street, who was the producer of the project, was leaving the company. Pretty soon after, he announced that he was launching his own company, making his own MMO. It was just very disappointing because he was extremely involved in the community and just had a lot of indicators that he really cared about this and was going to do his best to make it an actual game-changing, enjoyable MMO. Obviously hope for the best. But now about a year later, there's whispers and rumors that this Riot MMO might not even be happening, which honestly would be the least surprising thing I've heard in the last 3 hours.
So many MMOs end up never happening. Ashes of Creation is another one that looks like it might never happen. Like, they promise you everything, and then when they go to actually try to do it, they realize how conflicting so many things are. A game like League of Legends is simple. There's simple goals, and all you have to do is make sure that every character that you add doesn't break the game in some kind of way. The mechanics play with all the other mechanics that you've created so far, but like you're only having so many of those mechanics running at one time. In an MMO, you have tons and tons of stuff going, and it's really difficult to make anything feel important when like you're talking about tiny percentages making game-breaking differences, right? Like, if you go and do old content in World of Warcraft, like, it is steamrollable because of how big the things have crept up over time, like how big the numbers have become.
At least. Riot Games has set a huge bar for themselves, which has raised everybody's expectations for everything they ever make. I can't tell you in confidence whether or not this game's happening or not. What I can tell you without a doubt is that it has been a bumpy ride behind the scenes. And if you'd like to see what Riot is...
Can you imagine developing a game, like having hundreds of thousands of man-hours into something and then throwing all that away, guys? To anyone who thought we might not do that, like, we are.
Most likely fearing. If you look up New World's player count history and see how that unfolded, you can see just how risky it is to...
That 913,000 all-time peak, that's like concurrent. Playing 19 minutes ago, 7,209. Can you believe that? Like, that's such a crazy drop-off. That game was broken, though. And, like, go on Reddit, go type in the words on Reddit, like, should I play New World in 2024? And read some of those posts. It's harrowing.
Release an MMO in the modern era of gaming. I've got around 760 hours played on New World and was a part of the community during the rise and fall of it. And I also saw how quickly that new and refreshing ideas can completely drain the life out of a player base if done incorrectly. New World game design caught up with itself. Not really sure how long...
There were so many glitches in New World upon release, like what's going on here in Capture the Flag. Like, someone has to stand there and hold that flag, right? And like, they discovered that if you like drug the game window around, because it was all client side instead of server side, if you drug the game window around, it just wouldn't register anyone's damage. So people would just grab the flag and then drag the client around and just be invulnerable. And this whole game was based around like in-game PvP.
That game's...
And like games don't recover from stuff like that. Like, there's a certain section of the population that's going to play MMOs, and a lot of those people are going to play a new one right when it comes out because they want to get on the ground floor. And then for years after your game has done really badly, people are going to go, don't play this game, it's broken.
It's going to be up for probably...
And people will not pay $30 for a game that people tell them is broken.
Some of the most fun I've had gaming during its peak. And I really wish things were handled differently so that it wasn't in the condition it's in now. It was a good game with some crucial things wrong with it, ended up being the reason for its downfall. An MMO can only handle so many mistakes to the point where even a company that gets their funds from Amazon themselves can't really do anything for you anymore. So there's been some sprinkles of MMO here and there. A lot of
way less traffic going to Amazon than what you think there does.
Underwhelming Kickstarter projects, some that are in a permanent early access phase, ones that scam hundreds of thousands of dollars somehow. But in the last like 5 years, I think New World and Lost Ark are the only two MMOs that can claim they've had any kind of success. I've never played Lost Ark before. I tried looking up some stuff to get some more insight about it, but just like any MMO you try to get information on, it's players that have...
I played a little bit of Lost Ark, but the truth about Lost Ark is that it just seemed like it was such an overwhelming money sink that I just couldn't justify it. Like, by the time that I got into it, it was so bashed down and just in a broken state that I was like, well, I wish I would have played this when it first came out.
Hundreds or thousands of hours just complaining about things, not giving any real insight to the casual.
That's the problem with MMO players in general, is that, like, man, MMO players only talk about the negative stuff in the game. Like, people will just tell you everything that's wrong with the game, and then you'll think that, like, only there are only things that are wrong with this game and there's nothing good about it, but they play it every single day of their life for 8 hours a day. And it's like, no, there are good things, but like they don't feel the need to talk about those because they feel like everyone knows about those things, and they're only complaining about things because they want those things to be fixed desperately because it's their favorite game in the world.
Experience of the game. What I can tell you is that it's nowhere near competing with the top dogs of the MMO world. So between Riot's situation and New World's fumble, it got me thinking, why is this so hard? What is going on? Making an MMO has to be the most irresponsible, stupidest idea you could ever go through with. In the last 10 years, there have been 20 MMOs notable enough to make the Wikipedia page, and 12 of those are still up and running. Obviously, there's been more than 20 MMOs.
Or Maple Story 2, man. Elder Scrolls Online, I put a lot of hours in that. It's not my favorite. BDO. Albion Online, Adventure Quest 3D, the worst MMO. Listen, I love Arctic's Entertainment, but like
released, but I'm just not counting the ones that Josh Strife Hayes finds buried in the deepest depths of the deep web.
Yeah.
That peaked at 23 concurrent players. They don't really count right now. It's definitely a dark age. Now, I would say when World of Warcraft went live in 2004, that is when the true golden age started. Some may say that when Ultima Online came out, it kind of changed the game. I don't really think an MMO golden age existed without WoW. It doesn't feel right
totally
to me.
not.
WoW did for MMOs.
WoW was like I was playing RuneScape in like 2002, like right before RuneScape 2 came out. I was playing RuneScape Classic. I've been shown it by a neighbor. And like I remember WoW being the game that I wish I had a computer good enough to run, and I wish I had parents rich enough to pay the subscription cost for it. Like that game looks so amazing. And I mean, like, people forget this, but World of Warcraft, the reason I came back to World of Warcraft is because World of Warcraft was the game for a long time. Like it really, it wasn't the MMO. Like WoW was like, if you were a gamer, people thought of you as playing World of Warcraft. They thought of that episode of South Park, you know, and they thought of you as being that dude who's like, we could, you know, like sitting in his chair, leaned all the way back, playing World of Warcraft.
What Fortnite did to Battle Royales. Because you may have noticed once Fortnite saw success in its
The Christians thought it was, you know, stealing their children. That's how big it was.
Side game mode of Battle Royale that wasn't even what they wanted their players to try, caused about 55 to 100 others to emerge. Once WoW showcased that you can build a long-term player base with as much success as it had, with as much money as it generated, not only with its initial launch in 2000.
Bro, that looked so cool to me as a kid.
2004, but with its expansions in 2007 and on, I mean, how do you not convince investors to let you try and build another WoW? So once this golden age started, much like the Battle Royale boom, we also got a few really, really good games to emerge alongside WoW. They're still here, people playing them. We also got
Wizards 101, I don't know, man. Dungeons & Dragons Online was okay. Lord of the Rings Online's pretty good. Age of Conan, that one's gone. Guild Wars. People still love Guild Wars, but it's really not an MMO.
An overwhelming amount
I didn't realize there was a Mist Online.
Stinkers. Some real stinkers that are not around anymore. MMOs were
Tales
peaking.
of Pirates. Dude, I played Tales of Pirates. That was fun. I like Tales of Pirates. It was like a puzzle game. It was good.
Mid-2000s. It was the thing to do. It was the style of game that players wanted to play. Even the
I wanted a tricorn hat so bad.
Projects that saw short-term success,
Star Wars Galaxy,
but didn't really survive. Some still, to this day, have community-backed projects, private servers, to keep the community alive. All these MMO games meant a lot to people. They proved to be this genre of game that you truly did become a part of. And even though the MMO scene was
you had so much community, you know, like people made a lot of their friends through MMOs. Like, you didn't have social networks back then the same way. Like, people were using these to talk to people. And, like, that's how you made friends and socialize back then. Like, I knew a guy on RuneScape named King1868. And, like, he and I talked so much. I met friends through Mabinogi and MapleStory. You know, like Mark Rio and Chance, like... And I played these games with these people, and we talked about things, and like we knew about each other's lives, you know? Like my guild leader in Mabinogi, Mark, was like such a big influence on like the things I wanted to do like in my life and with my day-to-day life. Like I wanted to make them proud of me, you know? Like it was so important for me to log in because I wanted them to like me.
Going down in the late 2000s, early 2010s, games like Guild Wars 2 and Star Wars The Old Republic made their entry into the MMO scene and kind of picked up the stragglers that maybe weren't really happy with their games anymore or didn't really scratch the itch they wanted and were still able to give a lot of players their home base of a game. 2013 unknowingly became the grand finale of MMOs. It was the year of revival because in February we got old school RuneScape and in August we got Final Fantasy XIV. Both of them existing for the sake of redemption. RuneScape's main game was at an all-time low. Final Fantasy's first MMO, like 3 or 4 years earlier, was a huge flop, so both these companies basically tried again. And now 11 years later, it's safe to say that both of them did something right.
Heck yeah, man.
Confirmed. Since then,
It's
there's
crazy
been
how
a few
popular
notable
old school
MMOs
RuneScape
that have
still
come
is.
out, and they did okay.
Can you guys believe that children still come and play old school RuneScape? Like, I've seen videos. I can't remember this kid's name. This kid made a video.
Alright, so I've been sitting here for like 30 minutes now.
This is 2 months ago.
Just mining these rocks so I can get my my pickaxe skill level to 15.
This was me as a kid, dude. This is what I was doing at his age. Like, I can't believe that people come to this ugly ass game still in 2024 as children when they have Fortnite available to them and are like, this is I want to do this every day for the rest of my life. Like, good for them, man. Makes me so happy.
Online, Albion Online, Black Desert Online. These games are online, in case you were wondering. Lost Ark, New World, but none of them really made the impact they were probably hoping for. It's almost as if all players interested in MMOs have kind of found their place and stayed there. It really is kind of like finding your home base, and that's just where you retreat back to at the end of the day.
Your
We're
comfort
all kinda
games, yeah.
safe and cozy in our MMOs right now, kind of making the most of it. But even though the kings are up there on that hill, it doesn't mean they're resting up there comfortably. The wrong mistake could send them tumbling down
Totally.
at any moment.
Dude, the MMO, you could turn World of Warcraft into the player numbers of New World in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. That's all it would take. Ruin Mythic Plus for people, and that's all it would take. Like, that's the main thing that makes people feel like they're getting bitches out of WoW. You ruin that, and the game is dead. It's like a thread that it's balancing on top of.
Profitable, successful games up there. They got up there with blood, sweat, and dev tears. A lot of mostly dev tears. We now have insight to another reason of why creating an MMO is a really dumb idea. Money. Microtransactions have played a significant role in keeping these games alive. They've got to pay a staff to maintain and update and create for the game so that they keep their
I love the fact that like the first store mount in WoW made more money than the expansion for StarCraft 2 did. Like, more money in sales on its first week than the whole sales of StarCraft 2's expansion did, man. Those microtransactions keep those games going. People love to buy stuff. People love to spend their money on something. Like, they just love to do it. They love to feel like they can spend a little money and get something that looks cool.
Players there, they've got to pay for these massive servers. I don't even know how much those things cost. And also making sure that they meet the quota so that the very top executive owner of the company gets the salary that they've written for themselves.
Question, is Jagex milking their players?
Well, yeah, it's quite a big question.
And whatever they need to do to get there is what they got to do. Subscriptions by themselves cannot sustain an MMO. It could pay for WoW in 2007 when everybody was paying a $15 a month subscription on top of buying a $40 expansion every other year. But even that caught up. They have a shit ton of microtransactions, and obviously that's more of a problem for the
buy
MMOs.
Gold. You could buy WoW tokens. You can buy gold. It doesn't even matter anymore. Like, there's no reason to even try to like get. They've made gold worthless.
Make it big, and they have all of these expenses. But any game that sees this big success is going to eventually run into this problem of how do we afford to keep this going. Back at my home base, I give Jagex a lot of money every year through subscriptions. I pay for my subscriptions on multiple accounts, as do other people. And Jagex makes millions off of players giving them monthly subscription money. But you may have noticed while we're over here frolicking in our flowers of polls and community involvement and fun, our brothers and sisters over at RuneScape 3 cannot say the same.
Is Jagex actually this oblivious? We're in a time where RuneScape, at least according to the majority of the vocal player base, feels like it's being neglected, and as someone who's been covering the news and following the game actively for years now, I also think it's being neglected. How does a company with hundreds of employees and, according to the most recently released financial statements, £137 million in revenue, have the audacity to recolor a 3-year-old outfit and sell it as part of some kind of limited edition pack?
RuneScape 3 has...
Because people buy it. That's why. I can't believe that people buy cosmetics with their money. I've done it, you know, but like, it doesn't mean anything. People know that you bought that cosmetic. Even if it was like a, you know, once in a whatever, it only comes out right now and you have to buy it. Like, people know that you bought it. They don't think, wow, he's really good because he has like... my favorite thing on Dead by Daylight is when I see someone who plays like trash with a $10 skin. I just think, yeah, dude, maybe you should have like saved that $10, bought yourself an hour of time and played this game a little bit more.
Has been contaminated with regularly updated, toxic cash-grabbing microtransactions. It's experiencing increments of worse. Players just begging the devs to please stop, as if the devs have any control over it. RuneScape 3 is the soldier spreading its arms, protecting us from projectiles, while we sleep soundly, telling the devs that we're not fond of this idea they think they're having. But what I'm trying to say is that even old school RuneScape, as one of the most populated MMORPGs in modern gaming, only exists because RuneScape 3 offers microtransactions. Because what you've spent on old school RuneScape membership subscriptions in the last 6 years, 10 people spent that same amount yesterday on RuneScape 3 keys. Yeah. Those are the players that Jagex needs, not you, not me. MMOs are expensive to make and they're expensive to maintain.
They need us both. Like, they need people who actually play the game. Because without people who actually play the game and enjoy it, they wouldn't have more players coming into the game. And you wouldn't be able to cast such a wide net to try to catch the people who are going to spend all that money on the game, right? Like, for every person who gets into RuneScape Classic, or old school RuneScape, for every person who gets into that game, there's going to be for every 100 people that get into old school RuneScape, there's going to be at least one person who spends extra money somewhere in Jagex's ecosystem. They move on to RuneScape 3, they're like, oh, this is the newer version, let me play that. And then they like spend money on that. Like they're trying to farm those people. So they need people who are playing the game and enjoying it to like spread the love for it so that people are brought in. Marketing doesn't work, man. Like putting out videos and stuff for your games, like that kind of marketing doesn't work. Like you need grassroots people on the ground who love your game and tell other people to play it.
Which, by the way, whoever over at Amazon Games thought that a one-time purchase of a $40 game was going to be enough to sustain a huge MMO, what are you doing? What did you think was going to happen? And then who decided that microtransactions were going to be your next alternative, and this is what you have in the store? They practically begged to not make money.
The aesthetics of New World look terrible to me.
Fucking Bracken, baby.
The biggest problem that new MMOs are going to face are getting a true player base. Not the players that are there on day one seeing how long they can wait in a queue. Not even the ones that invest 200 hours and experience a little bit of endgame. I'm talking about the true player base. The player base that if your game shuts down, they will be on the front lines doing whatever they can to create their own version of your game,
so
some sort of backup code to keep the community alive.
Yeah.
Those are the players that you're...
And that's the truth, man. Like for some people, it's their whole life. I always tell people, man, like you're a 30-hour Andy out here not realizing that people live on this game. There are people who have played Dead by Daylight for 20,000+ hours. 12 hours a day since it launched, just That's their game. That's what they do. That's their whole thing. You know, they know everything about it. Like you're on Twitch with your 70 hours in Dead by Daylight, seeing that it has a bunch of viewers. Oh, I play that game. I could stream that game. Like, no, you don't play that game. You think you play that game, but you don't play that game. Not
looking
like that.
for. They're there because they love the game. They're there for real. And those are going to be extremely difficult to get because chances are they already have that game. They're already a part of that community. And most of them aren't going to be feeling that way about multiple MMOs. At this point, new MMOs have to pull their player base from other MMOs. You're going to be trying to pull players from WoW and from Final Fantasy and from RuneScape and Guild Wars 2. The players that already know what they like and dislike about massive multiplayer online games, which means that by default, a new MMO is immediately competing with the top of that hill. Could you imagine trying to enter that space and these are the guys you're standing next to, trying to gain their players?
Yeah, one thing that I think about RuneScape that's so good is the fact that like your gear doesn't really devalue. Like in WoW, if you miss a couple years of WoW, you're going to come back and basically everything that you have is worthless. Because they're just trying to rush you to in-game content as quickly as possible. Whereas in RuneScape, like your equipment might still be worth the 4 mil that you paid for it, and there might be equipment now that's worth 100 mil, but you probably can't do the 100 mil equipment content anyways. And the 4 mil content that you're doing is still active content because of how long it takes to grind through this game.
Good luck. The best kind of player base to get for a brand new MMO.
So people live there.
Is a new MMO player. Ones that haven't experienced the other ones yet, and you're going to be their first experience, which would mean trying to appeal to the iPad babies, the TikTok brains, the fucking Fortnite Warzoners. You know, the ones that can't even hold their attention to short form content unless there is a video below the main content that has some car surfing on ramps so that their weird brains allow them to stay there. Dude, drop a 14-year-old into vanilla WoW Northshire and see how long it takes for their brains to start freaking out because there's not enough colors and numbers.
You just gotta put a YouTube video on your second monitor. It's easy.
The generation following us is not gonna really be interested in this slower paced MMO style that we fell in love with. Why would they run around Elwyn Forest?
They
or
might
go kill
be
goblins in Lumbridge.
So I don't get along with this idea that games have to be super attention grabbing, right? Like people are developing constantly. I didn't really come back to MMOs until I was ready to take on a game that I needed to like absorb my brain and like grow with. Like I decided in 2020 that I was going to start playing MMOs again seriously, and it took me probably until this year to become like to the point that I feel like I'm pretty confident in all the MMOs that I play. Like I feel like I know how to get from the beginning to like late stages of the MMOs that I play because I've played them for enough time. And I wanted that. And I didn't want that before. And I think that people will grow into that no matter what. You need to like make them think that your games are cool when they're young so that when they get old enough and do have the attention span to play those games, that's when you get them.
When in that same time frame, they could have had 3 adrenaline-pumping Warzone games to feel dopamine from. They don't chase the same numbers going up that we do. It makes me wonder if the generation following us, when they get to be our age, if they're going to be more interested in goal-oriented things like long-term MMO goals. I don't see new generations coming into MMOs, and I don't see current MMO players jumping to a new one. When they've already established their community.
A lot of kids were not into those kinds of games back then and are into them now. Like, this is not a new thing that young kids want, like, quick, like, fun, easy stuff that's easy to comprehend and they don't have to try that hard at to, like, have a good time in it. That's not new.
And love for one that they've been a part of for years. I think the current games that we have in the MMO space are going to remain there, at least for as long as both the players and the devs have that desire. In order for an MMO to take the reins, become the next big thing, to really be the game changer, it's going to have to be very outside the box. Never done before, a big risk. Chances are the next MMO to really overtake these or even see equal success as these hasn't even been thought of yet. But I just have this strange feeling that the next MMO that comes out that has 6 classes to choose from, a woodcutting skill, and 2004-ass fetch quests is not going to be the one to see themselves at the top of that hill with those. It's just a hunch. I don't know. This Ashes of Creation game I've seen talked about for like the last 3 years is supposedly going to be the MMO that changes everything. They had this dev blog come out at the end of March, and I was like, okay, this looks cool. And on the side of the screen, I see some quests about killing 20 goblins. And I'm like, no fucking way that this is the revolutionary thing. The next big MMO is not gonna have kill 20 goblins as a fucking quest, I promise. They've already—
Well, it's the junkies who just like need another one that they haven't experienced yet, that they don't know everything about yet. That's the thing, right? There's people who are going to dump 10,000 hours in this game that have already dumped 20,000 into WoW and have already dumped 50,000 into RuneScape and like need another one. Like they just do. Like, if you play a game for that long, you will hate that game. You will become hyper aware of all the negative things, and you will have done all the fun things already. So you need something else to latch on to.
Already lost in my eyes. There's just no way another one of those is gonna be the one to be up there. I don't know. There's a few things that I believe the next big MMO needs to do differently. I think the #1 priority is to come up with a structure that eliminates the locust swarm effect. Finish this as fast as possible. Get to max level as fast as possible. Get to the end game, the best in slot, the min-maxing as fast as possible. It's a real shitty habit that we've developed with video games, especially MMOs recently. I think it's played such a big role in the overall downfall of MMOs, why everything feels underwhelming now. Unfortunately, I think as long as a game structure exists that allows for that kind of mentality, it's not gonna find the success that it would have found back when we weren't playing games like that in the golden age of MMOs, when things were actually enjoyed. That's why—
when you had no idea what you were doing in RuneScape, when finishing Monkey Madness was like a big deal. I saw a Reddit post a couple months ago where a kid over the course of like 1 month had put in like 200 and something hours into it. It was insane. Like, and he had gotten like 60s and 70s and like everything just after like 1 month of playing, because he's following all these guides and everything. And like, people think there's clout. People think there's money to be had if you can get good at it. And so they want to get there as quickly as possible because they want that bag, bro. I've told people in Dead by Daylight before, like, hey man, there's no money at the end of this match, right? Like, that you don't need to be moonwalking right now. Yeah. Like, that you can just play this freaking game. Like, that.
why we want to play games.
They don't.
Solo now. It's why you can get from level 1 to 70 playing by yourself in WoW. And that's not going to make for a successful MMO. You might as well just make a single player game. Other MMOs would benefit a lot by trying a more RuneScape style quest system where it feels almost like a mission with a lot of benefits afterwards, rather than just the same generic copy-pasted coding of a quest of going and getting 10 mushrooms on a tree and bringing it back for XP. It's the reason why a game like RuneScape, which people have always poked fun at its graphics, feels more alive than a game with fucking Unreal Engine 5. It's the way it feels when you're a part of that world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of MMOs kind of...
There's no dead content in RuneScape, because in order to play the newest content, you have to have done everything else. Everything. Like, there's so much unlocks that you get just from questing in that game that you cannot make it to the end of that game without doing like quite a bit of questing. You might not have to do all of it, but you have to do the majority of it. And every single quest isn't like a fetch quest. It's this it's like this storyline of where you have to like use your brain or a guide to solve what's happening and solve the problems of the people who are talking to you during that quest. Like, there is no go and get 5 of this and bring it back. Like, there are continuous storylines and characters that you meet that start at the beginning of that game that you talk to near the end of the game. And that doing those things unlocks the late game raids and all that shit. And that takes like hundreds of hours. I mean, you cannot speed run. You can, but like, you cannot speed run RuneScape. For all intents and purposes, like, you are going to be time locked behind hours of gameplay, and that's important because you have to like understand that game on a core level to be able to play it. Like, it's crazy to like say that, but like, just the method of getting around in that game is so convoluted but perfect. Like, it's just so well done. It feels, every unlock that you get feels like a big deal.
look the other way when it comes to structuring things like that. They're too scared to try something else for progression. I don't know, they just play it too safe. The world has to feel alive, and everyone's end goal can't be the same. I'm not a game dev, I'm just a consumer. I complain. My role here is to complain.
Totally.
I'm not the guy. If I knew what this next MMO looked like, I would be trying to make it. I promise you I would. I don't think any current game devs have really wrapped their head around what it takes to bring an MMO to the next level, but I think with a lot of emerging game engines and technology we're capable of now, we're eventually going to see that thing that really makes our eyes widen and our mouths salivate. It's gonna happen. Could be a year from now, 10 years from now. Our generation of MMO players, probably the only generation of MMO players, are going to be looking for that game, and we'll know it when we see it. But for now, I think we're just gonna be cozy in the games that we play. For a more optimistic look, I think if RuneScape has taught me anything, other MMOs have really not experimented with shit. They have not really opened up the sandbox of themselves. The fact that World of Warcraft just recently released a hardcore version after it took someone developing an entire plugin to do it just kind of shows how they haven't really tried shit yet. And the fact that they just tried a battle royale is even funnier. They're trying, you know?
And they're starting to do that. They're like obviously taking hints from RuneScape. Like the Mists of Pandaria season that's about to come out is obviously based off of like RuneScape's leagues. It just is. The unlocks that you can get in the actual game by playing a version of the game that has restrictions that aren't in the natural one and also gives you boosts to like combat those restrictions. That's what RuneScape does with its leagues, and that's like the max dopamine that you could get in RuneScape too. I can't tell you how good it felt to play Trailblazer and like just feel like running the algorithm in my brain of like I can get to level 100 so fast, and just like where to get my gear from and everything, like how I was going to like make my way through this game in this like super speedrun way over the course of 48 hours, just like cranking up to like level 90 was insane.
We'll give it to them. Blizzard's trying. They might be 10 years too late to the Battle Royale boom we mentioned earlier, but they're trying, and we've got to give them that credit. Blizzard has done everything in their power to self-destruct, and they're still standing. It's incredible. If they're
people love WoW, and like I love WoW, and I didn't even grow up playing WoW, really. Like I played, I don't know, like 3 days of WoW when I was a kid, and I still love that game. I know there's so many flaws, but I still love that game. I don't think I ever will stop. Like it's just it's ingrained into me as being important to my culture.
Going down by now, they're never going down, all right? That company's here to stay, which gives me confidence that other MMOs will be here to stay too. So we don't really have anything to worry about.
They're games that you can play for
our
decades.
Favorite games, our cozy home base.
And you probably will
gone.
if you like
And I think
them.
a lot of MMOs need to take advantage of this world that they've created and the different capabilities their engines have, and look and see how they can approach things differently like RuneScape has, with hardcore modes, Iron Man modes, and region locks with leagues, restricted game modes, challenges, people like watching challenges, and I think a lot of the big MMOs nowadays have the ability.
Yeah, man, I mean, look at what Settled has done, you know? Like Settled is single-handedly responsible for getting more people into RuneScape than probably anybody else who's ever been a player. Like, maybe Zezima, but like, I mean, legitimately. Like, Settled has done so much by just doing challenges, restricting himself to tiles, restricting himself to a region. Like, he has engineered and created so much of what the meta of RuneScape has become. And that's just from creativity of content. And WoW is not set up to make content that way, but luckily it is set up to be like the biggest game of all time.
To implement something like that,
MMO of
to
all
keep
time.
their current active player bases occupied and entertained for a long time. And all that being said, I truly hope I look like an idiot a week from today when that next big thing is announced. I hope I'm wrong. I really do.
Yeah.
I think there's a future for MMOs, and we'll all be here for it. Anyway, I think that's all I got. I've been putting together the house video. It's just 5 days of a lot of footage. It's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. I also have a special project I can't really talk about right now, but I'm working on that beginning of May. Other than that, it's been a pleasure. Great seeing you. Take it easy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I love MMOs, and I hope that they continue to go on. Like, I don't think there's a genre that's harder to get friends into than an MMO because of how much time you have to, like, commit to it. But I love doing that, and I think lots of people do love doing that. You meet so many people through playing them who love doing that. And so, like, I think that they will continue to go on. Obviously, I think people will be playing old school RuneScape in 2045. I think people will be playing WoW in 2045. I don't know if there will be another game that is the MMO that takes everyone away from those. That's the next game. Like, the next game that is huge will kill those games, and I don't know when that's going to happen. Like, the nature of video games itself has to shift in order for that to happen. Like, VR has to become amazing. You have to, like, plug into a world, and it's like, you know, an anime where you just, like, wake up in the world and you're doing stuff and, like, you know, fighting with your own hands, and, like, it's an MMO and it looks like real life, but you have all these superpowers. Like, that's the only thing that I can think of, because in order for a game to be, like, the next big thing, it has to suck all the players out of the MMOs that are already playing it, and then it also has to suck all the players out of, like, Fortnite and all that stuff. So, like, the nature, like, those games have to become obsolete in the same way that a game like a text-based adventure in the old days has become obsolete. Like, graphical user interfaces made text-based games obsolete because it was like a whole different paradigm shift, and that's what has to happen to make another MMO amazing. And so I don't know when that's going to happen or if it will ever happen, you know? But Jimmy always makes great videos, and that was a cool video from Jimmy. So if you haven't subscribed to Jimmy already, you should go give the video a like. It was a good one, guys.